From the moment you were born, something felt off. Not wrong, not broken, just different. Like you were dropped into a world that was pretending, and you were the only one who could see the cracks in the mask. While others learned how to conform, how to play along, how to play along, how to nod and smile at the lies you couldn't. You wouldn't. Not because you were rebellious, but because something ancient inside you refused to betray what was real. You questioned what others accepted. You felt what others ignored. You saw what others couldn't admit. And because of that, you didn't fit. But you weren't meant to, because you are not here to fit into the illusion. You are here to shatter it, not with violence, not with ego, but with the raw, radiant power of your presence. You are a disruption in the matrix, and the matrix knows it. As a dark chosen one, you are not dark because you are evil. You are dark because you come from the spaces most people are terrified to explore. You walk with the shadows not to be consumed by them, but to reveal them. Your consciousness holds the codes of contrast, the awareness of both the light and the void. And that gives you a kind of sight that most people can't handle. They want comfort. You want truth. They want safety. You want freedom. And freedom doesn't come from pretending. It comes from piercing the veil. That's why you never fit into school, into family dynamics, into mainstream culture. You weren't meant to. Because if you did, you'd fall asleep. And the world doesn't need more people asleep. It needs people like you awake enough to break the trance. Let me ask you something the world never dares to. What if your failure to fit in is the most sacred success of your soul? What if the pain of being misunderstood was the very fire that forged your discernment? What if your alienation was not a punishment, but a preparation for something far beyond what the world could ever offer you? Because the truth is, you didn't come here to blend in. You came here to see through. Every system, every structure, every spiritual bypass, every false light masquerading as truth, you came to stare it in the face and not flinch. That's why people feel uncomfortable around you. Not because you're negative, but because your presence reminds them of what they've buried. You are a living mirror, and mirrors make people confront themselves. You're not here to argue. You're here to transmit. You don't need to convince anyone. Your very existence is the disruption. People feel your difference before you say a word. That's why strangers stare. That's why people project onto you. That's why you've been attacked without provocation. Because your field emits a frequency that unravels illusion. And illusion doesn't go quietly. It fights. It resists. It tries to seduce you into doubt. But you can't be seduced forever, because once you've tasted truth, nothing else satisfies. And when you finally realize that you're not fitting in is evidence of your alignment, you stop apologizing for it. You stop dimming. You stop translating your soul into a language that others can digest. And you start speaking in code. Not for the masses, but for the ones who came here to remember. And let's be real, this path isn't easy. It's not glamorous. It's not full of spiritual fluff or Instagram-worthy awakenings. It's gritty. It's isolating. It requires you to sit in the fire without needing to escape. To lose everything you thought you were so you can become what you actually are. You will be tested. You will be misjudged. You will want to give up. But you won't, because your soul signed a deeper contract, not for comfort, but for clarity, not for praise, but for presence. And when you remember that, really remember, you stop chasing belonging and you start anchoring truth. Anchoring truth is not something you shout. It's something you become, quietly, or relentlessly, unapologetically. And that's when the world begins to shift, not because you forced it, but because you refused to betray yourself. So I ask you now, are you finally ready to let go of the need to be understood and step fully into your role as a frequency disruptor? Are you ready to stop negotiating your souls, knowing just to be tolerated by a world that's addicted to illusion? Are you ready to walk alone if it means walking in truth? Because if you are, you've already activated the codes. This is your initiation. This is your remembering. You are not here to be accepted. You are here to awaken acceptance itself. And that begins not by changing the world, but by refusing to change your essence to fit it. You were never meant to blend in. You were born to burn through. And now it begins. There is a rare kind of soul that doesn't even need to speak to shift the atmosphere. Just by walking into a room, something shifts. The energy tightens. People get uncomfortable. Secrets feel exposed. And it's not because these dark chosen ones are trying to call anything out. It's because their very presence is a form of sacred disruption. Their frequency contradicts the illusion. It destabilizes falsehood simply by being. That's why they often feel like they're too much or too intense. It isn't their personality causing the resistance. It's their frequency. They carry a resonance that doesn't match the collective trance, and so the trance begins to short circuit in their presence. Most people don't know what to do with that. So they label them. They exile them. They project onto them. But all of that is just the ego's way of saying, I can't hide around you. You and I both know what this feels like. You've walked into rooms and felt the conversation shift. You've spoken truth and watched people recoil. You've offered clarity and been met with silence, dismissal, or even hostility. And maybe for a long time, you thought something was wrong with you. But what if that reaction was proof of your medicine? What if the resistance you faced is simply the echo of your power pressing against the collective spell? Because this world is built on illusions. Illusions of separation, scarcity, hierarchy, identity. And you carry a frequency that shatters those structures, or not through confrontation, but through alignment. You're not here to argue with illusion. You're here to exist so fully in truth that illusion has no place to hide. This is why dark chosen ones are often misunderstood, even by other spiritual people. Because they're not here to play roles. They're not here to perform ascension. They're here to embody disruption. And disruption doesn't always look pretty. It's not about being graceful. It's about being real. These chosen ones don't sugarcoat. They don't pacify. They don't dilute. They walk into false light communities and feel the frequency drop. They hear spiritual bypass and feel the hollowness behind the words. They see love used as a mask for control and can't tolerate the dissonance. Why? Because they are calibrated to truth. And when you are calibrated to truth, you can't unsee illusion. You can only choose whether or not to mirror it back. And dark chosen ones? They mirror it back, whether the world is ready or not. Let me ask you this. Can you hold your clarity even when your clarity makes others uncomfortable? Because that's the test. The world will offer you thousands of opportunities to conform, to smooth your edges, to soften your knowing. It will tempt you with belonging, but only if you betray your signal. And every time you do, you lose a piece of yourself. That's why so many dark chosen ones feel fragmented, because they've spent years translating their soul into palatable fragments. But at some point, the soul says no more. At some point, the cost of fitting in becomes greater than the cost of being seen as a threat. And that's when the disruption becomes sacred. Not defiance, not rebellion, but devotion to reality. And that devotion becomes an energetic sledgehammer to every false frequency around you. And here's what's wild. The more you embody this clarity, the less you need to explain yourself. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to defend your knowing. You don't need to justify your intuition. You simply be, and the codes radiate. People will either align or exit, not because you pushed them, but because their system can't hold your signal if they're not ready to evolve. This isn't arrogance. This is frequency physics. When your field becomes coherent, it amplifies or exposes incoherence around it. That's why people either awaken or avoid you, and both are sacred. Both are part of your impact. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be legendary, not in the eyes of the world, but in the evolution of consciousness itself. So let me leave you with this truth. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be felt. You are not here to win arguments. You are here to collapse illusions. You are not here to walk quietly through this lifetime. You are here to walk with such alignment that every step recodes reality itself. And the people who are meant to walk with you, they won't be the ones who tolerate your truth. They'll be the ones who rise to meet it. But that only happens when you stop hiding, when you stop negotiating with illusion, when you stop asking for permission to exist as your full spectrum self. The world doesn't need more conformity. It needs your disruption. And that disruption begins the moment you say, I will no longer shrink. There is a frequency that doesn't just speak truth, it is truth. Not conceptual, not philosophical, but vibrational. And when that frequency enters a space, everything not rooted in truth begins to shake, break, crumble, collapse. This is what lives inside the dark chosen ones. They aren't here to teach in the traditional sense. They are here to transmit. And their transmission doesn't always bring peace, not at first. It brings disruption. It brings breakdowns. It brings the collapse of identities, illusions, programs, and projections. That's why people either have radical awakenings around them, or they project their deepest shadows onto them. It's not personal, it's physics. Truth doesn't ask for your permission before it rearranges your life. Oh, it arrives, and whatever doesn't match falls away. You've likely experienced this your whole life. People opening up to you within minutes of meeting. Others suddenly ghosting you with no explanation. Friendships that implode after one conversation. Jobs that fall apart when you step into more authenticity. This isn't chaos. It's clarity at work. Your frequency doesn't tolerate false alignment. That's why things collapse. That's why people shift. That's why spaces change when you walk in. You are a living calibration device, and your presence either upgrades or ejects what's not aligned. Again, not because you're trying to, but because your field demands coherence. It holds the memory of what's real. And when the world has built itself on what's false, coherence hurts. It exposes, it strips, it dissolves, but it also liberates. Let me ask you something few dare to consider. Are you willing to be the cause of collapse if it sets someone free? Are you willing to be misunderstood, feared, or even hated if it means being a catalyst for truth in someone's life? Because that's the level of devotion the dark chosen ones are called to. This path isn't for the faint of heart. It's not for those who need to be liked. It's for those who came here to remember the eternal, to hold the line of reality so fiercely that even when the whole world is seducing them into illusion, they stay anchored. And in doing so, they become lighthouses, not soft beams of comfort, but beacons of uncompromising clarity. People may curse the light at first, but eventually, that light becomes the only thing they trust. And that's when the real work begins. When you operate at this level of integrity, you stop asking the wrong questions. You don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" You ask, "What part of my frequency is reordering this space?" You don't ask, "Why did this person leave?" You ask, "What truth did my presence reveal that they weren't ready to hold?" You don't ask, "Why do I feel so alone?" You ask, "What illusion have I shattered that no longer allows me to participate in unconscious community?" These are the questions of a true disruptor, or of a world reshaper, of a being who is no longer here to be fed by the system, but to rebuild the grid from the inside out. And the more you embody this, the more magnetic you become. People who are ready will find you. They won't need to be convinced. They'll feel it in their bones. They'll say things like, "I don't know why, but I feel like I've known you forever." Or, "I've never heard anyone say it like that, but something in me clicked open." That's how you know your frequency is doing the work. You're not manipulating. You're not strategizing. You're resonating. And resonance is the new revolution. When you live in truth, you don't need followers. You generate field coherence. And that coherence activates dormant codes in others. You don't need to go viral. You become the virus, the viral code of awakening that spreads silently, invisibly, irreversibly. So here we are at the edge of the old world, decoding a new one with every breath. You didn't come here to fit in. You didn't come here to be comfortable. You came here to crack the shell of illusion from the inside. And that cracking is messy. It's loud. It's confusing. But it's also sacred. Because on the other side of the collapse is clarity. On the other side of the burning is blueprint. And you are not just the fire. You are the architect hidden inside the flame, the one who remembers, the one who reminds, the one who carries the original code of what it means to be real in a world built on performance. And your time is now. You fit into a lie I was born to dismantle. You thought the mission ended with dismantling illusion? No, that was just the entry point. Because once the illusion collapses, once the old world burns, something must rise in its place. And that's where the real work begins. You are not just a disruptor, you are an architect. not an architect of buildings or systems, but of frequency structures. You've come to seed a new reality into the grid, one that isn't based on control, fear, or distortion, one that doesn't seek to dominate, but to resonate. This reality isn't built with hands. It's built with consciousness, with intention, with energetic precision. And everything you've gone through, every exile, every betrayal, every ego death was training, initiation, so that when the old world crumbled, you would know how to build what comes next. But let's be clear, this isn't about utopian fantasies. This is about vibrational infrastructure, the subtle scaffolding of the new earth, the invisible architecture that will hold the next level of human evolution. You don't need to know how to code websites or design sustainable cities, not yet. What you need to master first is your own field, because your field is a transmitter and a frequency anchor. And whatever you hold in your field with full congruence becomes real, not metaphorically, literally. You are broadcasting reality into the quantum every second, not by what you say, but by what you are. If you hold distortion, you amplify distortion. If you hold truth, you amplify coherence. And coherence is what creates structure in the crystalline grid of New Earth. This is why the dark chosen ones were never meant to follow blueprints. Because they are the blueprint, you don't need to study what came before. You're here to bring in something that's never existed before, something that doesn't yet have language, something that can't be taught, only remembered. That's why you felt like an alien in your own life, because you carry codes from beyond this system. You are not here to tweak the old. You are here to replace it, not with rebellion, but with resonance, with remembrance, with rootedness in divine reality. And when you become congruent with that frequency, when your thoughts, your actions, your relationships, your money, your words, your silence all align, you become a living temple, a walking portal, an anchor point for the next dimension of reality. Let me ask you this: are you willing to build in silence, even when no one sees you? Because the most powerful architects of the new earth are not on stages. They're in the shadows, in the spaces between, in the forests, in the deserts, in the places where the noise of the matrix can't reach. They are not posting, they are encoding. They are not performing, they are transmitting. And their transmission rewires the grid. It opens portals. It activates dormant DNA in others. It clears distortion from the land. It reclaims energetic territory from the old systems of power. This is what it means to build with frequency. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's exact. And its impact is permanent. So if you've been waiting for permission, this is it. If you've been holding back your vision, your knowing, your codes, because you were afraid people wouldn't understand, let that fear die today. Because you're not here to be understood. You're here to be true. And in that truth, you will attract the others. The ones who speak your language without words. The ones who remember what you remember. The ones who have also been building in silence, waiting for the signal. And when you gather, even if it's only 2 or 3 of you, the grid lights up. The earth remembers, and entire timelines get rewritten, and not because of what you do, but because of what you are.